Hi everyone. In this course, I will introduce the concept data model to all of you. And this is a crucial concept to in order to create your own application, because in the end, an application revolves around modifying and retrieving data. As I have shown you before, the front end talks to the back end then saves stuff into the database. Okay, so without getting into the database for now, let's go to something that might be familiar to all of you, which is a spreadsheet. All right, so let me go to here. Okay, so imagine if I have a sheet called account, and it would save information about an account, things that we might create by registration or other means, right? And we will have a concept of a username, that's your column name, and maybe has a display name. Uh, or maybe you will have something like date of birth, right? So that will be like 1989, 06, 16. That will be like 1989, 06, 17. Something like that. Each row stores the information about a single entity, an entity in this case being an account. In a database, you usually have a thing called primary key, and in Momen, the primary key is always going to be an integer. The integer in Momen will always increase. It's a monotonically increasing integer. It also is non-repeating, so it's unique. But other than that, there's nothing that is guaranteed in terms of the ID. The ID only specifies the identity of that entity. It is very likely you would end up with, instead of 1, 2, it could be the next number could be 11. And the next time you insert, it could be 1, 1, 1. There is no guarantee at all. So do not rely on the consecutiveness of the ID in any case. Okay, so counts are fairly simple, and that is going to be what you could look up things based on the ID. So if I look up for the ID one, I get this particular row, and I can retrieve information about those. And certain row columns are also unique. You can also look things up by those column too. So username hopefully is going to be unique, and you can look up using username as well. Obviously, certain fields will allow you, or columns, fields and columns are synonyms in this case. So certain columns support what we call as range lookups. A range lookup is something like greater than or less than, instead of equals. So those are range lookups. Date of birth is very likely range lookupable field. Okay, so in our application, there are courses, right? Because we are doing, in the end, a Udemy knockoff, and the core concept of the Udemy website are the courses. So we have a table called course, and similarly, it has an ID, as all tables in Momen will have, and I have a name, and have some content, and you can see how hopefully that's fairly easy to understand. And then on top of that, it will have a category ID. What does that mean? That means that a course belongs to a category, or in other words, each category has multiple courses. That is also a very, very important concept to master. So there's this thing called relations in a database. You can express that in spreadsheets to an extent as well by using VLOOKUP. And this is how you do it. Basically in here, you can see we had VLOOKUP E2, which is the category ID, in the range category A to E, and column 2 exact match. Okay, what does that mean? We're looking at 1 in this category table A through E. So the entirety of that table, and we're looking up number 1 in the first column of category, and that's the definition of VLOOKUP. And once we find it, we'll return the content of the second column. And the exact match means that if you don't find it, then you just return no value. So we'll see how that works. So in this case, we're looking up number 1. We found it in this the first column, and then we're returning the second column's content, which is here. But maybe we could put something else, like we could say like created at, and this will be like like 2022 0101, and maybe this one is like 0102, this one 015. It doesn't really like the formatting, but that's okay. So we'll just leave it like that. 0101, 0102, and maybe we'll just do that 3 or something. Okay, at least now it's the same format. And we could be looking up something completely different. So let's just change this to category created at. Okay, that's just the name of it. So instead of returning the second row, I'm going to return the third row. And that is what we are seeing here. So we're looking up category 1 and returning the third column, category 1, third column. So that's why these are showing 1, 3, and category 2, third column. That's why it's showing 1, 2. Okay. I will undo this. Okay, so those are one-to-many relationships, and the reason is you can't really show courses in here because there's a non-deterministic number of courses that belong to every single category. And on the other hand, you can always find the corresponding course given a corresponding category given a course, because again, the relationship is that every course belongs to at most one category, and every category has 0 or more courses. It owns 0 or more courses. That's a one-to-many relationship. So from category to course, one category corresponds to multiple courses. And there's another kind of relationship, which are many-to-many relationships. Many-to-many, as the name suggests, it's between like one of each entity can contain or own multiple other one, and vice versa. So a concrete example would be friendship. You can have many friends, and a friend, which is also another person, can also have many friends. It's actually a special kind of relationship. It's self-referencing. You and your friend probably belongs to the same type, both humans, right? Not all many-to-many relationships have to be self-referencing, and also one-to-many relationships can also be self-referencing. Another type would be like in this case, student takes course. A student can take multiple courses, or a course can be taken by multiple students. There's no restriction on how many courses a student can take, and also no restriction on how many student a course can be taken by. So the way we model this kind of relationship is by creating another table. In this case, another worksheet. The way we do it is by storing the ID of both, or the identity of both entities. So this particular row just means that student ID 1 has taken course ID 1, and the second one is a student ID 1 has taken course ID 2. And then similarly, student ID 2 has taken course ID 3. IDs are not very nice to look at, so we do a VLOOKUP on each one of those IDs. In this case, we are looking up the student name, which is this guy. 1 corresponds to JYK, and we're getting the display name. And the course, we want the course name. So this one, we're looking up course 1 in the course table, and we get the name out of it. So this is a lot nicer for humans to understand. JYK has taken cooking beef, JYK has taken cooking lamb, Eric has taken flying helicopter, and Eric has taken cooking beef class. Now, one thing you need to be cognizant about is that you don't want a repetition of that, right? What does it mean to have a student taken the course twice? Well, it could, if you do have that, you need a way to distinguish between those two events. That could be just an event, like you repeatedly take the same course, but then you might want have like created at, or when it was taken, or maybe it was because it was taken under a different professor. So, but usually you want to make sure there's no repeated value in student ID and course ID. And also, when in a database, you don't want to store any of this stuff. In fact, in this spreadsheet, we're not storing any value, we're just storing a formula. So the nice thing about that is, even if we change the name of JYK to Jiang Yao Kai, it will get reflected here. Otherwise, every time you change something here, you have to go to every single table that has stored that value and change it again. Then you're gonna miss some, and you end up with inconsistent data, because then sometimes student number 1 is known as JYK and sometimes known as Jiang Yao Kai. So that's obviously not ideal. Okay, so this is how you model many-to-many. You store the ID of each entity, and then you do have some constraint on that combination. So you ensure that there's no repeated value on repeated pairs in those two columns.